Right then. Hollywood loves selling you a story, doesn't it? They love selling you the glamour. Grand. They want you to remember the late 1960s as this glorious time of revolution. Easy Rider and The Graduate. Brave new filmmakers taking over the asylum. They want you to remember the polish. But the real story, the one with the carry-on, the absolute state of it, the real story of the late 60s is about the old, dying dinosaurs. The massive studios, bleeding money, bloated and arrogant and terrified, thrashing around trying to make one last big epic to prove they still mattered.
I'm very important.
They thought the whole world was their plaything, their backlot. Come here to me, and I'll tell you about the absolute hames they made of a film called The Bridge at Remagen. A film where the studio's arrogance was so pure, they decided to shoot their make-believe war right in the middle of a country that was about to have a real one. And I'll tell you about the absolute panic when the real tanks showed up. Now that's the good stuff. So, the studio is United Artists, and they've got this property, a book about a real event at the end of World War II, March 1945. The war is nearly over, the Germans are falling back, and the whole plan is to blow every bridge over the Rhine River to stop the Allies from crossing into the homeland. It's a proper scorched earth job. The Yanks are just resigned to a long, bloody slog, probably having to cross in boats. But then, one company. A knackered, worn out, cynical bunch of lads who haven't had a hot meal in weeks. They stumble through the smoke and find one last bridge still standing. The Ludendorff Bridge at a little town called Remagen. The story itself is a cracker. On paper you couldn't fault it. You've got the American side led by George Segal as Lieutenant Hartman. He's not a hero, he's a fella who's just seen too much and he wants to go home. He's been pushed too hard and he's just about broken. Then, you've got his opposite number, the German officer Major Kruger, played by Robert Vaughn. He's a good German if you like, an aristocrat. He knows the war is lost, he thinks Hitler is a madman, and he's been given the job of blowing this bridge. But he's dragging his feet, trying to save the thing, maybe save his town, give his men a chance to surrender, so it's a race. Can Hartman's exhausted Yanks, who have no business being there, capture the bridge before Kruger, who doesn't really want to destroy it, is forced to? It's got everything. Built-in tension, big explosions, moral ambiguity, tanks, two big stars. It's a prestige picture, a proper epic. The studio taps a fella named David L. Wolper to produce. Now, Wolper is a big name, but in television, documentaries, this is his first massive feature film, his leap to the big leagues. And he's got notions, he wants grit, he wants realism. He wants this yoke to feel like you're in the war. He's not gonna do it small. He hires a director, John Guillermin, a man known for being, well, let's just say, ahead the ball. A tough, screaming, demanding man. He'd later do The Towering Inferno, so you know he likes his chaos. But the real genius stroke, the one that shows you the pure, uncut studio arrogance, is the location. Where do you shoot a film set in 1945 Germany? The actual Germany? Get way out of that. Too expensive. It's all rebuilt. Too modern. No. They looked at a map, and their eyes landed on Czechoslovakia. Now, in 1968, Czechoslovakia was interesting.
Interesting.
It was the middle of what they called the Prague Spring. The leader, Alexander Dubček, was telling the lads in Moscow to kindly get stuffed, just a bit. He was loosening the all-Soviet censorship, allowing a bit of freedom, a bit of art. Socialism with a human face, he called it. And part of that human face was a desperate need for Western money. So Wolper and the United Artists suits, they swan in there like they own the place. They look around, the architecture? Perfect. Looks just like old Germany. The rivers? Grand. And the prices? Oh, sweet divine. It's cheap. Dirt cheap. They find a little town called Davla on the Vltava River. It's a dead ringer for Remagen. They even find an old unused bridge nearby. They make a deal with the Czech government, a government that is, remember, actively poking the Soviet bear. Right, says the studio. We'll need to build a replica of the Remagen bridge towers on your bridge, and we'll need to shut down your town, and we'll need tanks, lots of tanks, and planes, and, oh, about 2,000 soldiers to be our extras, and the Czech government, desperate for the cash, desperate to show the West they're open for business, says, absolutely, no problem. They gave them the Czech army. They gave them soldiers, thousands of them, dressed them all up, half in American uniforms, half in Nazi uniforms, and told them to run around shooting blanks at each other. They gave them real military hardware. They opened up their reserves. The German tanks you see in the film, half of them are Czech T-34 tanks, real ones, just with a swastika painted on the side. The arrogance of it is breathtaking. The studio is so blinded by the discount, so giddy at getting a real army to play with, that they don't stop to think, they don't listen to the news. They don't pay attention to the rumble just over the border, the papers are full of it, the Russians are furious. Leonid Brezhnev in Moscow is looking at Dubček's reforms, and this circus, this American film crew making a film about the defeat of a totalitarian empire running around his backyard, and he's not happy. There are reports of massive Warsaw Pact troop movements on the borders of Poland and East Germany. Did the studio care? Did Walper care? Not a bit of it. They had a schedule. They had a budget that was, for now, looking beautiful. They had a director with notions about himself and a vision to capture. They had a cast of stars flying in. They were making a masterpiece. What could possibly go wrong? I will, yeah. So, production kicks off in the summer of 1968, and from day one, it's an absolute circus, a grand start. First, you've got the director, Guillermin. This fella is a pure head the ball. He's a tyrant, he wants realism, and he doesn't care who he has to break to get it. The actors are miserable. George Segal, the lead, is terrified of heights. So what does Guillermin do? He makes him run up and down the actual bridge towers, hundreds of feet in the air, with explosions going off all around him. Segal said later he was absolutely terrified. He hated every minute of it. Then you've got the stars, Segal, Robert Vaughn, and Ben Gazzara. Three big, proper Hollywood actors, and they are stuck in Prague. Now, the Prague Spring was great for freedom, but it wasn't exactly the Sunset Strip. They are bored, they're sitting in their hotel, the Alcron, drinking themselves into a stupor every night. Gazzara, in particular, is acting the maggot. He's difficult, he's arguing about the script, he's showing up late, he's just being a pain because he's a big star and he's stuck in a communist country and he can... Robert Vaughn, he's just brought his new wife, and he's trying to have a honeymoon while Guillermin is trying to kill him on a bridge. The whole atmosphere on set is toxic. Disappointed! But that's just normal film chaos. The real problem is what's happening outside the bubble. They're filming these massive battle scenes in the town of Davley. They've got their Czech extras, dressed as Nazis, marching through the square. They've got their American tanks, which are also Czech tanks, just painted different rolling in. They're setting off massive explosions, fake buildings are falling down. To the local people, the ones who aren't in on it, it looks like a full-scale war has just erupted. People are panicking. And all. The while, the political tension is just ratcheting up day by day. The whispers are getting louder. The Russians are on the border, there are troop movements, you lads should probably hurry up, the production liaison from the Czech government is getting paler every day. He's practically begging him to finish. But the studio, Wolper, Guillermin, they're in their own world, they're artists, they're making an epic. They've got scenes to shoot, they're running behind schedule because Gazzara's been a gombeen and the weather's bad, they can't just leave. The studio in Hollywood is just looking at the receipts, happy with the cheap extras, telling them to crack on. The arrogance. They're so deep in their make-believe war, they can't see the real one breathing down their necks. And then, August 20th, the crew has finished a long, miserable day of shooting. They're all back in Prague, at the Hotel Alcron. They go to bed. In the middle of the night, the whole city starts to shake. Stop the lights! It's the sound, a low, deep rumble, a sound you can feel in your chest. Not like a few film tanks, like hundreds, thousands. The sound of an entire army on the move. Robert Vaughn, the actor, wakes up. He's annoyed, he thinks it's the film crew. He thinks that Egypt Guillermin has decided to start filming a scene right outside their hotel at 3 in the morning without telling anyone. He goes to the window, pulls back the curtain, probably ready to roar down at them, and he freezes. The street below, Wenceslas Square, is full of tanks. A solid, endless column of them. But they're not the film's tanks, they're brand new. Frontline Soviet, and they have the big red star of the Soviet Union, and sitting on them are soldiers, not Czech extras. Real, armed, grim-faced Russian soldiers. The Warsaw Pact has invaded, the Prague Spring is over. You have to just picture the scene. The pure devilment. This multi-million-dollar American film production, this symbol of Western capitalism, has just woken up to find itself on ground zero of an active, hostile Cold War Soviet invasion. The film's fake war. Meet the real one. It is an absolute circus. The hotel is surrounded. The phones go dead. The radio is just static, then a new harsh voice comes on, speaking in Russian and broken Czech. The airports are seized, the borders are slammed shut, the studio back in Hollywood. They go into absolute screaming panic. They're not arrogant now, they're terrified. They have just lost their entire production. They've got a cast of A-list stars. George Segal, Robert Vaughn, Ben Gazzara, trapped in a country that is now, officially, behind a brand new Iron Curtain. Their insurance doesn't cover this. Nothing covers this. Wolper, the producer, is running around the hotel like a chicken with its head cut off. He's gone from visionary documentarian to a man trying to figure out how to not get his entire cast sent to a gulag. He's on the one working phone line he can find. This is the bit that's pure Hollywood, only it's real. They can't fly, the airports are full of Russian paratroopers, they can't take a train, the lines are cut. There is only one way out. Drive. They have to get to the Austrian border, hundreds of kilometers south. But how? The production vehicles are all at the film set, miles away. So they do the only thing they can. They go to the taxi rank outside the hotel, and they just hire every taxi they can find. A convoy. 20, 30 taxis. They pile the stars and the key crew members in. No luggage, just what they can carry. Segal, Vaughn and his wife Gazzara. All these pampered Hollywood big shots. Suddenly looking like refugees, which I suppose they were. They make a dash for it. A convoy of taxis, driving south, trying to get to the border before the Russians seal it completely. And the whole way they are passing endless columns of Soviet hardware going the other way. Tanks, armoured personnel carriers, trucks full of soldiers, all heading for Prague. And they keep getting stopped at these pop-up checkpoints. Young, terrified Russian soldiers, jumpy, sticking machine guns in the windows. And here is the most absurd part of the whole story. Robert Vaughn tells it himself. They get to a checkpoint. A young Russian soldier, maybe 19, looks scared and angry, and he shoves his Kalashnikov right in Vaughn's face. He's screaming something in Russian, and he stops, he squints, he looks at Vaughn, and his whole face just changes. He breaks into this massive, childish grin, and he says, in broken English, "Man from..." The soldier recognized him. He recognized Napoleon Solo in the middle of an invasion. This kid, who probably grew up secretly watching banned American TV, is now face to face with his hero. He starts babbling about the show. He calls his mates over. "Look, Napoleon Solo!" They're all shaking his hand. They don't care about the papers. They don't care about the invasion.
We don't care.
They're getting autographs. And then they wave the whole taxi convoy through. The very celebrity arrogance that made them a target is the one ridiculous thing that got them out. They were saved by a TV show. They all make it to the Austrian border, pour out of the taxis and walk across, free and clear, safe. But the film is a dog's dinner, an absolute unmitigated hames. They're not even halfway done. And all their stuff, all of it, is back in Czechoslovakia. The custom-built bridge sets, the cameras, the props, the wardrobe. The tanks they'd rented from the Czech army, who presumably were now busy fighting the Russians. Millions and millions of dollars of gear. Just gone. Abandoned. The studio's last gamble had blown up in their face. The cheap, efficient epic was now a multi-million-dollar write-off, abandoned in a war zone. So, what do? If you had any sense, you'd cut your losses. You'd take the insurance payout if you could get it and go home. You'd admit you were an idiot and that maybe, just maybe, filming a war movie in a political tinderbox was a bad idea. But this is the 60s studio system. They're not just arrogant, they're stubborn. They're dying, but they're gonna die swinging. They are not written this film off. They've already spent too much. So, they drag the whole shattered production back to the West. They limp into West Germany. They have to start from scratch. They find a new town, a new river. They start rebuilding the multi-million-dollar sets they just abandoned. It costs a fortune. They can't get the same scale. They can't get the thousands of extras. They have to scramble. They finish some scenes in Hamburg, Germany. They have to shoot other bits in Italy. The whole film becomes this patched together Frankenstein's monster. The budget just disappears into the stratosphere. What was meant to be the cheap epic became one of the most expensive, chaotic logistical nightmares of the decade. And all because the studio suits thought they were smarter than the Red Army. When the film finally comes out in 1969, the studio sells this story. They sell the chaos. They make it sound like they were brave artists, defying the Soviets to bring you this picture. We finished it, against all odds. Get away out of that. Don't you believe it? They weren't brave, they were stupid. They weren't defying anyone, they were running from the mess they'd made. So what's the real story? What's the lesson? Was it just bad luck? A historical accident? Not a bit of it. It was a monument to pure Egyptry. It was a war against common sense, waged by a dying empire. The old studio system was so bloated, so arrogant, so high on its own supply of golden age guff, that it thought the real world, real politics, real armies, real countries, was just part of its prop department. They needed a cheap Germany, so they rented a country on the verge of invasion, and they were shocked when it was invaded. They were a rotten ship, and this film was the iceberg they were so busy trying to get a discount on, they steered right into it. This whole mess, the bridge at Remagen, it's the perfect tombstone for that whole era. They were so busy trying to refight World War II on film, they got caught in the middle of the Cold War. They were looking backwards, at their old glories, their old epics, while the real world and the new filmmakers were just running right past them. As me all fella used to say, you can't wake a fella who's only pretending to be asleep. The world was screaming at them, every newspaper was reporting it, but the studio? They were snoring, the lot of them, they couldn't see the nod, they were too busy counting their money. And they got exactly what was coming to them. So now you know the real story of the bridge at Remagen, not the heroic war film they sold ya, but the absolute circus of making it. That's the real dirt from the cutting room floor. Right, I'm off. Sloncha.